Yeah, hello and welcome to the A-League Agenda presented by Neds. I'm Daniel Garb. This is Robbie Cornthwaite. It's finals time in the A-League, Robbie. It's exciting.
It certainly is great to be here. Looking forward to a massive weekend of football.
Elimination finals this week. Let's take a look at the final six before we get into the nitty-gritty of both games and break them down. What stands out for you, Rob, now that after a wonderful campaign, we have our final six?
Well, obviously the Friday night clash, two sides that are really struggling for form. I think it's going to be an interesting one, see who turns up on that day. Obviously, if Adelaide United win that game, they'll face Central Coast. If Wellington win, they'll take on Melbourne City. And you would think that Western Sydney and Sydney FC will be looking at that game thinking, gee, let's hope the Knicks get the job done so we can avoid the Premier Plate winners.
And of course, Central Coast have had such a wonderful campaign. They wait in the semi-finals along with the Premiers in Melbourne City. Let's look at Friday night first before we get into the first ever Sydney derby in the A-League era, which is going to be fantastic, of course, on Saturday evening. But this is the Mayor of Adelaide. Nothing happens in that city without Robbie Cornthwaite knowing about it. So what's going on with that Adelaide United team at the moment? Because their form has faded dramatically coming into this game against a Wellington side that isn't performing much better.
No, only 2 points in the last 4 games. They went on that massive 12-game unbeaten run, and you just felt that at that time they thought maybe Melbourne City was catchable. As soon as that was out of play, they sort of dropped off. I don't know if that they lost a bit of impetus and a bit of momentum, but certainly the last couple of weeks haven't been great. Limped into the finals, but we know on their day, at their very, very best, they are a really dangerous side. Obviously, the two teams played each other 3 times this season. Opening day, actually, across there in New Zealand. Adelaide had plenty of chances, but couldn't find the back of the net and ultimately walked away with a 1-1 draw against 10 men. Wellington, I think it was Jan Sass, was sent off and played much of that game with 10. Second time around, Wellington just 1 win in 7, coming into this game with poor form. But Adelaide's form after the World Cup break was really, really bad, and they came away with a 3-1 loss in this game. And this sort of kick-started Wellington's season, and from there they went on a pretty good run. And then this result at Coopers Stadium, 5-1 to Adelaide United. On the score sheet, on the result alone, looks like a pretty good result for Adelaide, but Wellington in this game, more possession, more shots on goal, more corners, more expected goals. Their finishing was woeful.
Friday night at Coopers has been one of the best parts of this season. Can it get rocking again? And can Craig Goodwin, whose form has faded in the last few weeks, get going again to spark them?
Well, I hope so. I mean, Goody took out the Vidmar medal at the Adelaide United Club Championship Awards night. No surprises there. Has been a little bit quiet in recent weeks, but if he's at his very, very best, then obviously that gives them a great shot. And you're right, Adelaide fans have gotten behind the team all year, and I expect them to do the same again on Friday.
So that's a wonderful entree, of course, Adelaide against Wellington on Friday night. The main course, with no disrespect to those two teams, is the Sydney derby on Saturday evening. We cannot wait for it. Sydney FC against Western Sydney. The Sky Blues, just a sneaky chance coming into this final series. 3 wins in a row after being criticised all season long. And I think Western Sydney will be just a little bit wary despite being the better team for most of the campaign.
Well, for me, this is the biggest Sydney derby in A-League history. Like you say, the two sides, neither side's been able to win at home. So that's interesting with the Wanderers with the home ground advantage. Obviously, that first clash, Milos Ninkovic setting up Cassini Yengi. But this was the big statement from the Wanderers a little while ago. Round 21, 4-0 away from home, and absolutely tore Sydney FC to pieces. You would have thought maybe Sydney struggled to make the finals after a result like that, but they have managed to galvanise themselves. Leuni has obviously been brilliant since coming in during the mid-season. We know what Brandon Borello's been able to do,
awesome.
But real statement win this one from the Wanderers.
So the Sky Blues have only conceded 1 goal in their last 3 games, but in attack, they've got things back in order. Adam Lafondra, the main man in that sense. 4 goals in his last 4, Robbie. An experienced performer, we know that, and he's peaking at the right time.
Well, when things are going your way as a striker, they really do. We know he's had a great second half to the season. Missed a lot of games actually through injury. So 10 goals in 18 games now for the season. And red hot in his last couple. Goal against Adelaide United, giving him plenty of confidence as well, scoring against one of the top 3 sides in the league. But we know he's a deadly striker. On his day, he's the most dangerous man for me in the Sydney front 3.
Joe Lolly might not be there, though, with a hamstring injury, which is a massive blow in terms of the service for Lafondra. What about Brandon Borello, though? He's been unbelievable all season long. For mine, it's a 3-horse race for the Johnny Warren medal. Borello, Goodwin and Jamie McLaren. And this guy is every bit a Socceroo at the moment. He belongs in that squad based on his season, doesn't he?
I don't know who would have predicted this type of season for Brandon Borello at the start of the year, because he came in playing as a bit of a wide man, looking to make a late dash into the World Cup squad. Was very impressive, but didn't quite do enough. Only 3 goals, I think, in the opening half of the season. So he's come home with a wet sail, full of confidence, scored for the Socceroos as well against Ecuador, and he's just a man on fire. He's the one that's really driven this Western Sydney team into the finals. They were really struggling for a number 9. There was no one scoring goals. They couldn't find anyone to fill that role. And he sort of started as a makeshift striker, but he's got predatory instincts, and he's been banging them in.
Let's get into now the 5-minute primer. We're going to put Robbie under the pump to find out who wins this weekend and how. Let's start the clock, and let's start with Adelaide and Wellington. As I said, nothing happens in Adelaide without Robbie Cornthwaite knowing about it. So what's happened to Adelaide's defence?
Well, to be honest, their defence has been terrible all season. I mean, they've been scoring goals for fun, and it's kind of masked the fact that they've been conceding 2, 3, 4 goals a game. So against the Central Coast on the weekend, they were really, really poor. I was a little bit concerned with some of the efforts that I saw. I think there was times where the Mariners were on the counter-attack, and there was players jogging back almost at 75%. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if he's going to score, if Joe Gauchi's going to make a save, or if he's going to have a poor touch. You need to be sprinting 100% to get back and potentially save a goal. So it's been a problem all year.
Perhaps they need Robbie Cornthwaite back there. What about the Wellington Phoenix? So big news this season. Ufuk Talai's announced he's departing at the end of the campaign. Ollie Sale, arguably their best player, certainly one of them, one of their leaders, the goalkeeper, he's going to the Perth Glory. How much of an impact has that had on the squad? And can they now flick the switch on that subject, galvanise and say, you know what? Let's just put all that to the side and go out and give it a red-hot crack.
Well, I think it has had an effect. I think once Ollie Sale announced he was leaving, I think they've only picked up something like 7 points in 7 games. So it has had an effect. But I think you're right. I think it can galvanise the team. I think Talai should take a leaf out of Ange Postecoglou's book and tell the players, listen, we can't waste a moment of our careers. This is an opportunity for us to do something special as a group. They seem like a pretty tight-knit unit. With all that trouble from New Zealand, they're pretty well bonded. So this is their last chance to do something special, and I think they potentially could if they can use that as motivation.
Zach Clough might walk down the Rundle Mall and not too many people know who he is. He's been a crucial player, though, for Adelaide United this season and across the A-League. Ibusuki as well. Their returns, how important will they be?
Yeah, they're massive. It's no coincidence that Adelaide's form has dropped off without those two in the starting 11. I think the players that have come in have done a really good job, but I think Carl's said it in the past. With his young boys, he doesn't like to give them too much instruction. So at times, maybe they're slightly out of position defensively, and that's maybe affected Adelaide United. I think Ibusuki offers a real target. He scored last time against Wellington at Highmarsh Stadium at Coopers. So I think they're both big inclusions, and I think Zach Clough's that sort of workhorse number 10 that Carl Vidd enjoys so much. So massive inclusions for the Reds.
Who wins on Friday night and why?
Well, if the Reds show up, I think they win because they're the better team and capable of scoring plenty of goals. But if they don't, this is going to be a really, really tight game.
All right, let's get into the Sydney Derby. We cannot wait for it. An historic event, of course, in the A-League. And the spice has been added this season to this fixture. Corica and Rudin haven't liked each other despite being former teammates all season long. There's players who have changed clubs. There's niggle in the stands. Could it all boil over on Saturday night?
I hope so. It's the way we like it. There's plenty of storylines to write through this match. Wanderers starved of finals. They didn't make the finals for 6 years. This is their first time. So obviously Mark Rudin's done a tremendous job. At times it looked like they could potentially be challenging for the Premier's plate, but they have dropped off a little bit. A home game, as I said earlier, neither side's won at home this year, but you'd expect a massive atmosphere that could really drive the Wanderers forward, but they've got to give them something to cheer about. They've got to give the fans something to cheer about. They need to start well. And for Sydney FC, they'll be looking to snuff out that home ground advantage.
Well, Sydney's defence has been smashed all season, but they've only conceded 1 goal in their last 3 games. Jack Rodwell's back, a former Wanderer, of course. He's helped to solidify things with Alex Wilkinson. Can they keep Borello, Leuni, and others at bay?
They can, but it's going to be very, very difficult. We saw with that 4-0, every time the Wanderers pinched the ball in midfield or got an opportunity to run at that back four, space in behind, they tore them apart. Brandon Borello getting in behind the back four is going to cause problems. We know Wilkinson and Rodwell aren't blessed with pace. I wouldn't be surprised if Sydney maybe just sit back a little bit more and look to spring forward with the likes of Mack and Lafondra and Burgess as well. So it's going to be an interesting tactical battle.
It's hard to fathom Western Sydney after returning to the finals after 6 years, potentially being knocked out in the first week. It would be something they would struggle to take. Who wins this game and why? And does the finals experience of this Sydney squad, so many of them have been to big games before, can that have an impact in them causing a big upset?
It certainly can. I mean, like you say, plenty of their squad has been there, done that, so that gives them the edge. I think all the pressure is on Western Sydney. Sydney FC's form hasn't been great this year, and maybe some people didn't think they'd even make the finals at some point. So for them, I feel like it's almost like a free hit. I think all the pressure's on Western Sydney. At home and the way that they've been playing this season, I'm going to back him in and think they can get the job done.
It is going to be an awesome contest on Saturday night. We cannot wait for it. The whole final series is something to savour. This has been the A-League Agenda presented by Neds. I'm Daniel Garb. He's Robbie Cornthwaite. Thanks for your company, Robbie. Thanks for your company as well by watching, and we'll be back next week.